the literature you provided me, I got away from it.
Uh-huh.
I think, though, that when people like Jimmy Swaggart and Fred Price and Dan Schaefer and Jerry Falwell and some of the better-known Pentecostal preachers, which I know you don't think a lot of, are going more and more to this 3-day thing because it literally makes sense when you look at the entire picture. And I'm talking, I sent you a column about a year and a half ago, and even though you may not care for the minister in which this article appeared, biblically and scripturally, it made total sense to me. And this has to do, again, I'm no big authority, with the double Passover day,
right,
that particular year, the Nisan or whatever it is.
14th of Nisan. Now,
yeah.
You mentioned something about Jerry Falwell?
Yeah, because I'm on his mailing list too. I'm on a lot of them, and this question was asked to him, and of course, even Zola Levitt. Now, I don't know if you know Zola,
yes,
but okay.
Yes.
Now, Zola is coming to this conclusion. He has very emphatically said, well, maybe I'm changing my mind a little bit on this. Now, he hasn't come right out and specifically said that he buys the 3-day theory, but now he is challenging the old. Now, I don't know exactly, remember that the Worldwide Church of God probably did say 72 hours exactly, but I don't think you really, maybe they said that, but these others haven't. They're talking about 3 days. Now, an early or late Saturday night resurrection could certainly have made sense because, you know, the scriptures say they came in very early on Sunday morning, and they thought it was Sunday, and that's why they recognized it. And all I'm saying is there are a lot of evidences in the Bible, and there are more and more Bible student preachers who are going toward this Wednesday crucifixion with a late Saturday resurrection.
Well, let me point out a couple things, Ken, on this point. I was about to get to that. In fact, while you were on hold, I'm assuming you can't hear me on hold?
I can hear you right now.
Well, okay, but when you're on hold, you didn't hear that I had just brought up the idea of the 72 hours. Okay.
You were kind of chastised. You know, you were ridiculing the fact, well, exactly 72 hours.
No, I was just pointing out that this is one of the main reasons that this theory has developed. And part of the support that is mentioned of this is the idea that the Passover that year, that the Passover celebration was called a Sabbath in the Old Testament, and that this Passover occurred on Thursday in the year that Jesus died, and hence when the New Testament says that he was crucified on the preparation day, the day of preparation, that could be the preparation day for this other Sabbath, which happened on a Thursday, hence this is a Wednesday.
2 Sabbaths.
Okay, so now let me point out a few things about that. First of all, that has to assume that we know the exact year in which Jesus was crucified. And the fact is, nobody does.
Well, okay, all I want to say about that is that may be a clue as to what the exact year was.
If you reason from that direction.
Around. See, my line of logic on that point, I think, is as good as yours. That may be a basis on which we can determine the year.
But
go ahead from there.
But we can't do that, though. There's no way to figure back that way because, as you know, the calendar was messed up somewhat. I mean, Jesus was born anywhere from 3 to 6 B.C. And 4 to 5 probably the most accurate range.
7. Actually, the most recent is 7 years. It's 7 years off.
Okay, well, you know, but we're not totally sure of that, and it's the same way in attempting to determine the exact date of any time back then. We don't know how long Jesus' ministry was. There are some people would opt for a 2-year ministry, most for a 3, some even for as long as a 4-year ministry. And so even if you take, 30 years after his birth is when he began his ministry, We don't know what year that was. We don't know how long the ministry itself was.
But Jim, don't we have Hebrew scripture back at that time that identifies the Hebrew calendar, which we can reconcile with the current calendar? I mean, they kept meticulous records of these things.
Up until AD 70, they did.
And certainly the Jewish scribes know when the Jewish holidays would fall at any given period, all the way back to Adam and Eve, probably.
Well, I'm not so sure about that at all.
Okay, let's say Noah, Abraham. How far still?
No,
BC.
I'd have to disagree with that, because if they were that meticulous with dates, they would be just as meticulous with genealogies. And yet,
okay,
for
how about
example,
Isaiah?
and yet, for example, when the people returned from the captivity, there were certain people who could not become priests because they could not prove their genealogy. And then, of course, after AD 70 and the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, all the records were destroyed, and there was no way for anyone to prove what their genealogy was after that. And obviously, the record keeping was you could no longer force that issue.
And came the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, well, still there'd be no.
Would you believe Isaiah 53? And would you believe the actual dates? I'm not trying to give you too many. All I'm saying, Jim, is that I don't think that this is a doctrine that you can take a substantial stand on. The mere fact that Jesus twice said 3 days and 3 nights has got to leave it open at most to question. At most to question. Don't you see? That's my only point.
Okay, but I think that there is much other data that demonstrates that usage is a common usage, a common phraseology, especially by the usage of the word the preparation day. Now, I am unaware of any usage in secular or religious literature of the term preparation day for any day other than Friday. In fact, there was no word for Friday other than preparation day used in the New Testament. And in fact, as I understand, even in modern Greek, it's still the same word because of the way the New Testament uses it. And so we would have to assume, that this was a high Sabbath day that landed on a Thursday. It could have been a Monday or a Sunday, either one. And we also must assume that the gospel writers, in the only time it ever appears, uses the technical term for Friday of a Wednesday, with no other supporting evidence that they ever did that at all anywhere in the New Testament or any secular literature.
The following day was a Sabbath.
But they didn't use the term preparation day for any day but Friday. Well, that is a technical term.
How do you get away from the 3 days and 3 nights?
Okay, there are many ways